Saludos a Menno.
Chao. Saludos a Menno.
Ya los pongo en vivo para que ustedes lo vean.
Hello, everyone. So we will continue with our presentation. Next, we have Menno van Zaanen from South Africa, and he is going to take us to a visit to SADiLaR. Menno, very nice having you here. I'm going to do a brief presentation, and then you can go on with your visit to SADiLaR. Menno is a professor in digital humanities with a background in computational linguistics. In the past, he mainly focused on supervised grammatical inference and applied machine learning to sequential data, in particular, natural language. He has worked on multimodal structuring of data, music, and multimodal information retrieval, as well on proofing tools, spelling checkers for African languages. More recently, he has been applying digital techniques in humanities. Menno, thank you for joining us, and the stage is all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me. So what I'd like to do here is give you a very short overview of what we do at SADiLaR. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So SADiLaR is the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, and it's an infrastructure. So we try to help doing research funded by the South African Department of Science and Innovation. Now, like I said, it's a research infrastructure, so it consists of several organizations that together make up SADiLaR. Most of these are universities, so there's or organizations within universities. So there's the NWU, Northwest University CText group, so they do mostly natural language processing. There's ISELDA, which is actually an organization consisting of several universities who focus on language testing. UP stands for University of Pretoria, and they're our digitization node. Then there's the University of South Africa. They focus on WordNets for all the different South African languages. And CSIR is an organization, a research organization doing mostly speech. So each of these nodes has their own expertise, and I work at the hub, kind of trying to combine all of this information. We also have 11 researchers working at the hub, each for one of the official languages. Okay, now SADiLaR, the work we do at SADiLaR is essentially grouped into two programs. We have a digitization program, and the focus of that program is really to create collections of texts as speech, or perhaps even multimodal text collections, and also tools that allow the working of, so the using of these data collections. And then there's the digital humanities program that I'm mostly responsible for, that tries to build digital humanities kind of research capacity, so do training, for example. Can we go to the next slide, please? So let's say a little bit more about this digitization program. So the idea is that we want to have access to linguistic data collections, right? So these linguistic data collections contain examples of actual language use. So this could be text, it could be speech, just how we use language. And we want to have these for each of the official South African languages. So there in total there are 11 official languages. I think most of you know English. So there's actually quite a bit of language data for that, language collections for that, but there aren't actually that many data collections specifically for the South African English. Another language that actually contains decent amounts of language data is Afrikaans. So that's very similar to Dutch, for example. But for the other 9 official South African languages, there's really hardly any language collection available at all. So the aims of the digitization program is to collect more data sets. So for all of the South African languages, So that's often done by digitizing analog data. So we have, for example, books, and even for some of these official languages, there are hardly any books or newspapers available. But what we try to do is we try to get these physical texts and we scan them and OCR them and then make them available as data sets. The other aim is to make the data sets that we actually have easily available so people can download them and use them in their research, for example, or to develop linguistic tools. Can we go to the next slide? So the other program is the Digital Humanities program. And the idea here is that we want to help people doing humanities research or social sciences research, but then help them by using digital techniques. So the idea is that there's actually a lot of researchers here in South Africa who are quite interested in using digital techniques, using the computer to do their research. So researchers from the humanities or from the social sciences, but they don't really know where to start. So they have experience in doing humanities research, but they don't know exactly what tools to use and how to use these tools. So the digital tools. So we provide training in the form of workshops where we, for example, provide examples on how to use these tools and show them the steps on how to do this. And of course, we also do digital humanities research. And that's actually a very broad field. So it can be related to research in digital archives or new publication methods. So online publication methods, for example, or cultural analytics. How do people behave in a particular culture, natural language processing, etc. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so we have quite a few challenges. So on the one hand, one of the challenges, and I kind of hinted at that already, is to actually collect this linguistic data. So especially for some languages, there's really hardly anything. But then again, we also want to just digitize the existing books and newspapers, etc. But for some of the languages for which there's hardly any books and newspapers, we're kind of thinking of collecting information from the general public. So if they speak together or if they use social media, can we use that data to collect real language use? So that's one of the challenges. And the other one is actually researching kind of access to this language data. So can we show differences in dialects, for example? Can we visualize that? And can we share the existing language collections and make it available to different people? So what I'd quickly like to talk about here is so we're considering using virtual reality and augmented reality, both for the collection and the sharing of this information. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so I think there's a relationship, or perhaps there should be a relationship between digital humanities, this language data, and augmented and virtual reality. And we're actually considering different possibilities. So I'll show you three: the Spraakatlas, Glossopticon, and Bij der Hand. Can we go to the next slide? So the Spraakatlas project, that's actually a South African project that deals with the visualization of dialectual differences. So the research that was done was they took the Aesop's fable, The North Wind and the Sun, and that was translated to Afrikaans. And they've asked people to read the fable aloud, and then that was recorded. So this was done in different places in the country and also outside the country. So in Afrikaans, they collected the audio, and we have metadata on that as well. We have the audio and information on who spoke that, and also where did they do that, where did they live. Can we go to the next slide? So the Spraakatlas actually tries to visualize this information. So here you see, if you go to the Spraakatlas, you see the overview on the map. So it's mostly in South Africa, clearly, but also in Europe, in North America, and in New Zealand. And if we can zoom in, so if you go to the next slide, you actually see the locations where these recordings were made. And if we zoom in a little bit more, so on the next slide, you see one particular recording or information from one particular recording and also the metadata. So if you click on this kind of play button, you can hear the audio, you can hear the person speaking the fable, but you also have information about where they live. So ligging means location, Geslacht means gender, so this is a female speaking. Ouderdom is age, etc. So you get information, meta information about this recording as well. You can just click on the recordings on the icons to hear this. So this kind of gives an overview of the differences of dialects for Afrikaans. And we're thinking of expanding this for other languages as well. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so another project we're working on is this Glossopticon project. So this is in a way similar to the case that I just described, the Spraakatlas, but now it's in virtual reality. So the idea is that you can visualize, and so sonifies, you can actually hear these languages. So this already exists for the Pacific region. So this is a project developed in Australia for over 1,500 languages. And the idea is you can go to this website, you can essentially go into this virtual world and you can fly over the different countries, and you can get meta information about the languages, and you can actually hear the languages while you can fly over this virtual world. We go to the next slide. So if you enter this world, this is what you see. So this is part of Australia. You see Indonesia there as well. And this black box in the top right corner, you can actually select language families that you want to hear and you want to visualize in this world. So you select a few of these, and then if you go to the next slide, you'll see that these are then actually visual in this world. So these lines indicate kind of recordings of these languages. And you can fly through this world, and if you fly through one of these bars, if you go to the next slide, you actually see meta information of this particular language. So this is one particular language from Papua New Guinea. You see the number of speakers, and while you fly through the bars, you actually hear people speaking in that language. So you get a sense of the different sounds and the different languages in these different locations. Here, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so the third case that I quickly want to show you is called Beiderhand. So this is a completely different project. The idea here is that you want to kind of visualize, or kind of, how do you say it, get language information in a particular location. So you go to a physical location, a real environment, and there you see a small plaque with a QR code, and you can scan that QR code. And scanning that QR code actually leads to a location of the language information. And so this is one of these QR codes, and if you go then to the next slide, you get an idea of what it looks like. So here you might be in a botanical garden, you can scan the QR code on the plaque, and then you might get information. So this might be audio information, it might be textual, it might be visual information, or a combination of these that is kind of related to this specific location. So they've tried this in different places already, and you actually see people share information, their experiences, kind of started by this information that they received from this QR code. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so just to summarize, so I work for SADiLaR, so the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, and we deal with, on the one hand, digitization, so building of data collections, linguistic data collections, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, digital humanities, so helping people to do research in the humanities using digital techniques. So at the moment, we're actually quite interested in the use of virtual reality and augmented reality. On the one hand, for kind of linguistic data collection, and on the other hand, for making these linguistic data collections that we have, this linguistic data, make it accessible and give people a feeling of what goes on and where, just like the cases that I just showed you. So in a way, that's combining this digitization and digital humanities. So we're also thinking of trying to collect data using that. So provide people a particular environment that kind of helps them generate data. So tell them something about something they see, for example, and we can then record that and store that in one of these data collections. Okay, so like I said, these are a few cases that we're considering. So these Spraakatlas already exist. We're thinking of expanding that to other languages. For the virtual reality and augmented reality ideas, we're really still trying out to see what we can do and how we can get this going. So we're really open for collaborations on on similar projects. So if you have a project like this and you want to share the experiences that you have or share the techniques, then I'd be very happy to hear that. So that's what I had to say at this moment. So I'm open for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Menno, for your presentation. Now we are going to pass through the question. I think we have a question on the YouTube live. And the question is, which uses could this corpora have in language education context?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. So which uses could these language resources have in?
In education.
In education. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So actually there's a lot of possibilities. So how I often personally see it is these language resources are typically used to train natural language processing tools. So for example, a spell checker for a particular language needs to have example words that are valid. But it can also be more complex things. So for example, we built an app at the moment that you can, so specifically for COVID, you can go to a hospital and you can essentially select the words of a sentence or of a question that you have, and that's automatically translated into another language. So you can actually speak in your own, or kind of write in your own language, and then the app kind of translates that to another language specific for COVID in the hospital. So that's kind of practical use. But there's also a lot of use in education where you want to show examples of how language works, or you want to show examples of how it doesn't work. So typical mistakes that people make if they learn a language, for example. So having information on the most frequently used words, for example, is useful if you want to learn a language, because you probably want to learn words that are very frequently used. So for that, you also need to have these text collections. So there's a lot of things that can actually help there. It can be a spelling correction. It can also be an analysis, so syntactic analysis, the mistakes people make. You can essentially show that in apps like these.
Okay,
I hope that answers the question.
Okay, we have another question from Irena.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much, Menno, for the presentation. Do you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I do have a question about, have you ever thought about adapting your research and the application to children that have, like, for example, dyslexia or other type of problems with reading and understanding, maybe?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I know that there is research in that area. As far as I know, there is nothing specific for the South African languages. And I think one of the problems is that if you want to do something like that, so a little bit more specific, and I think it's very useful to do that, you need to have a lot of example data of how it does work. And you also need to have example data of the kind of same mistakes they make. So what are the typical errors that they make, and can we see that what kind of impact does that have for that particular language? Now at the moment we simply don't have enough information, we don't have enough data for these languages. So even though I think it's very interesting, it's I think at the moment quite difficult to do something like that. Yeah, if only we had more data, we could actually move in that direction as well.
Yes, I understand. I was just thinking that maybe in early process of developing everything would be appropriate, but obviously there is a need of more data for this specific topic. Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so it kind of reminds me as well of, and there has been some work, I don't know the exact details, of kind of second language learners who make particular mistakes. And you want to identify what are these typical mistakes, because then you can focus your education based on that. If they always make these mistakes, why don't you just discuss that beforehand? It's not exactly the same task, of course, but it might be similar in a way. If you see that particular mistakes are often made, you can, adjust your education and just to focus a little bit more on that. But again, for that, you need to have the data.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, does anyone has any other question? Okay, Menno, well, thank you very much for your time and for joining us here today at this virtual world. We really enjoyed your presentation, and if anyone has any question, you can contact Menno on the, you can see on the screen his contact details, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, and also thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed being here in this virtual world. Thanks.
Let's say to everyone the number 4.